Hello, 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 and welcome to the Blue Oval Podcast. I am Ben Weissel, and joining me, as always, Garrett Zalin. How's it going, man?
Ben, welcome back. I hope your time off was well rested. I hope you're well rested, and it was well deserved. And frankly, it was a good weekend for you to take off. But I'm happy to have you back, especially because after Sunday night of writing 9 straight hours of conference meet results, I was happy that I didn't have to talk about this alone again on the pod. So happy to have you back.
Absolutely glad to be back, and yeah, well, certainly so many results. Wouldn't want to miss this weekend. So glad that it worked out with being off last weekend because boy, conference weekend did not disappoint. We saw so many big performances, so many. I think we've talked over the last few weeks about a lot of these performances and be like, I don't know if we're going to learn that much about someone until we actually get to conference meet and we're actually seeing them in the postseason, and then we can kind of see how they do and make our thoughts a little bit more clearer on the national stage. I think there was certainly a lot of those type of performances where I feel a lot more strongly about some of my positions on different runners. So really excited to dig into this. Also really excited to see a lot of new ratings and reviews. We're up 1 on Apple. We're up to 90. 155 though now on Spotify.
I
3
like this.
new ratings there. So all I have to do is just take off a week and all these ratings come in. So that's something that we need to do. I'm sure Garrett is more than happy to do it. But for my ego, I would love to see those numbers be even better next week.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you to everyone who did that. That was awesome, awesome. I think also that's like the second time that's happened. So
Yeah, I
I
know
don't think
that's
I'm
which
that
is a
handsome.
little concerning for me, honestly.
But yes, thank you to everyone who has done that. We sincerely appreciate it. Keep doing that. If you haven't done it, we see you. We know where you are. You know, we're tracking it. We can't do that. Actually, that's not true. Also, Amazon affiliate links. I'm throwing that into YouTube pages now. I'm throwing that onto our podcast. I just find really good deals on Amazon that are considerably cheaper than where you would find them on the main retail website. So go check that out. It's in our link tree as well. I'll put that in the YouTube description as well. Go subscribe on YouTube. And with that, Ben, we can now get into the podcast today.
Absolutely. So we're just going to go conference by conference through the Power Five and the Big East. We tried to get in as many performances here as we could, but there was so much going on that there's a lot of really good stuff that we're just probably not going to be able to get to. Garrett did a great job with his first thoughts article of hitting a lot of those as well. So if we didn't talk about you, check out the article, and that will probably be touched on by Garrett. With that said, let's start in the SEC, and let's start with, I think, the biggest star in the sport right now, and that's Parker Valby, 15:07 for the win in the 5K. Doris Lemongol in second. Arkansas just putting a legion of women right behind them as well. For Valby and Lemongol, this isn't come as a surprise. These are really good results. For Arkansas, I think Peyton No in particular, really interesting results here, especially if you were looking towards the fall.
Yeah, Valby, NCAA number 4 all time for outdoors. She's running considerably faster. I know there's going to be someone who's like, you guys didn't talk about her performance enough. We didn't learn anything. We didn't. Sorry, we're moving on. Doris Lemongol, same thing. We didn't really learn anything. We do know that she can now double effectively, though, because she ran 9:28
Yep.
in the steeple to win the SEC title the night before and came back to run, mid 15:20s. It's really encouraging, especially the multi-round system in the steeplechase. It can get pretty tiring by the time you're probably in the finals at the national meet. Like that is not easy to handle. So interesting to see if she does the 5K steeple double at the national meet. Something to consider. But yeah, I think Peyton No is the big winner here. You run 15:34, was it? I mean, that's a ridiculous
Yep.
time for a freshman. I mean, she's been so good. I mean, so good since the fall. Yeah, her national meet performance was maybe not where it could have been, but
Mhm.
she's just not afraid to run with some of these women. And I gotta be honest, I don't know how much I love the women's 10K field in the West region this year. And I might even, oh yeah, I might pick her to be top 12.
Yeah, that's a good point. There really isn't a ton of like overwhelming talent in the West. I haven't really gone through and thought about the regions quite yet, but that's an interesting point. I mean, third at SECs in the 5K. I mean, that should put you in a position where you are maybe not favored, but certainly quite likely to make nationals.
Can I quickly read who the women are ahead of Peyton No in the West region?
Sure, go ahead.
Stine Thorvaldsen, Yasna Petrova, Rosina Machu, Haley Herberg, Jenna Hutchins, Nicola Jansen, Ali Upshaw, Eva Jess, Anita Thompson, Yonka Kutluk, Gracelyn Larkin, Samin Ander, Morgan Noakes, Bailey Hertenstein, Kristen Garcia, Peyton No. Did any of that
not
surprise?
an overwhelming list.
No,
There's probably like 5 or 6 women where you're like, all right, they should be locks. And then after that, it's pretty much there's not a ton of experience necessarily there that you would say is going to overwhelm her.
No, and granted, there's women behind her like Bourne and Rowe and Sarah
Right.
Carter. Yeah, they're like there, but even then, like we didn't see Rowe race this past weekend, and so
Yeah.
something to consider. But all right, that's all I have there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. All right, let's move on to the 10K, where we saw Hilda Olmawame just put down another great performance in the 10K to win. Anything here? I mean,
not even like a little bit. No.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Yeah, I think
moving on. Great performance
is the bigger winner, though. Of course.
Yes.
It's because of
exactly
how she ran. But yeah.
Doris Lemmengal winning the steeple in 9:28. Another great performance. I don't think we have a whole lot there. Michaela Rose, though, 158. And more surprisingly, Sanu Jallow, 159 to finish second. We've talked all year about how good this 800 field has been on the women's side. Where does Jallow stack up? Because it seems ridiculous to say that she's not like an locked in All-American after running sub 2. But there's just so many women that have run in that 2 flat to 201 range pretty consistently all year. And again, this was a huge PR, 2.5 second PR for Jallow. Where do you kind of put her in this 800 group now?
I mean, I think she has to be a very, very heavy All-American favorite. The only reason why I wouldn't say she's an All-American lock is just because she's young. And also because, like, she's been super consistent, but she's never been consistent at a 159 range. Like, so far this spring, she's gone from 203, 203, 203, 205 in the prelims to 159. So I'm sure there's probably some Arkansas people who are like, how on earth is she not a national title contender? I just want to see it like a little bit more. Like, I don't think it's unrealistic to ask, like, can you run at least 2 flat or maybe even 201 in between? Maybe we'll see that at the regional meets. I don't know. But I will tell you this, she was the only one other than Whitaker who has been able to legitimately challenge Michaela Rose this year.
Yep.
It was really impressive. I kept waiting for her to drop off. She never did. And she was pretty much with Rose until like 40 meters to go.
Yeah, I mean, as exciting as this performance is, I think it's just the fact that it's such a big jump, and to be able to, like, she's going to have to run 202 at least probably in prelims if she's at the national meet, and she's going to have to like go to battle with a lot of women who have been running like 2 flat and 201 all year. So I mean, I just worry about the consistency at this top end level for her, because she's not going to be able to get away with running 203 anymore. So if this is indicative of where she's going to be and she can kind of sustain this, then absolutely she like might even vault into like that title like contender tier that's kind of like right behind, I think, Michaela Rose, who I think we both see as the favorite. But and because of that, I think she's probably one of the more interesting runners to watch for the rest of the season, because there's just a lot, she could go in a lot of different directions here.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't also want to make it sound like we're like poo-pooing, just this phenomenal result. Like, this is an incredible result. This is probably, like, you could make the argument that this could be nominated for Best Performance Award like
Sure.
this season. I mean, Valby would probably win that, but like that could be
Yeah.
nominated just because of how like ridiculously and unexpected that was. Like
Mhm.
159 to challenge Rose like she did, super super impressive. Knowing that she can do that makes me feel a lot stronger about how she can succeed in the postseason, especially because she has shown consistency before. But yeah, the youth and then being able to replicate the consistency at that highest end, that is obviously the biggest differentiator between an All American and maybe even threatening Rose again at the national meet.
Absolutely. I think she's clearly shown that she has one of the highest potentials of anybody in this field now. Of it's maybe Whitaker, maybe Willis, and we'll talk about Willis later, and Jallow, who are, and maybe you throw in, I don't know, is it you throw in anybody else in that group? I mean, that might be it. That's like the three
Yeah.
that I feel like are the highest end abilities besides Michaela Rose. And not talk about Rose, but we've seen her run these crazy fast times. This was outstanding, though. Again, solidifies why we believe she is the class of the 800, despite it being so loaded. She can run her own race. She doesn't have to rely on anybody else. She can just go out and do it in any kind of setting, whether it's the postseason, the regular season. You can almost guarantee that she's going to run sub 2, and that's just not something that you can expect of really anybody else in the country.
I couldn't agree more. All right, do we want to move to Big Ten?
Before we do, let's just briefly mention Sam
Oh, right,
Whitmarsh
right.
on the men's side in the 800, 145 for the win. And we'll talk about Yusuf Bizimana later in the Big 12. But I'm getting pretty darn close to saying Whitmarsh is the favorite. Like, he has a look about him over the last few weeks. The consistency and the wins are piling up. I think this might be his year. He looks fantastic.
That is the smoothest stride I've ever seen.
Yeah.
That was so impressive. Like he maintained form, and I'm not saying that this was an easy race for him, but he made it look easy against a really good field, like a field that like had
Yep.
145 guys in it. Like Tyrese Reed's in that field, I think. Unless, yeah, I think he was in that field. And I'm with you. I don't think he's the sole national title favorite, but I think he's the most favored now of the title contenders. Yeah, I'm getting awfully close to choosing him. And Bizimana had a great weekend too.
Yep.
So yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think we're splitting hairs here in terms of who we think is the top favorite, but I just don't think either of us really expected to be saying this a couple months ago. And all of a sudden, between the 144, the consistency and winning SECs, I mean, it's really hard to argue against his resume this season. Let's go though to the Big Ten, where we saw another outstanding 800-meter race, and maybe another reason why we think Whitmarsh is the favorite. Adam Spencer dropping down in events, going from the 1500 meter to the 800, takes down a bunch of 800-meter specialists, beating Camden Marshall, Handel Rhoden, Rivaldo Marshall, in the 800 in their main event. I liked how you put in your first thoughts article and in the preview about Spencer just has this raw ability that even though he's not in his best event, he still has that top end talent to be able to hang with anybody. And sure enough, he did. For Marshall and Rhoden, I don't think like losing to Spencer is much of a, like, it doesn't ding them in any way really. Like he's a special talent. The Marshall race is a little bit concerning to me, considering, hey, you're the 800-meter indoor champ, probably shouldn't be getting fourth in your conference meet. That said, it's not like he's getting beat by guys that aren't in his same kind of class. These guys are excellent runners. If you have a little bit of an off day and you lose to these guys, I'm not super concerned. If we don't see a great performance from him at regionals, that's maybe where I'll start to raise the yellow flag a little bit. But right now, I'm pretty zen on him.
I'm with you. The only problem is that he was 5th at the Big Ten Indoor Championships. And so,
and that clearly was not
right.
predictive of anything.
And so I'm with you. I'm kind of like, I wanted to see a little more. But the signs, like he still ran 145. He was the only guy in that field that's run 145 this season.
Yep.
He won the indoor national title. He's generally been pretty consistent throughout this spring. That was the first race where it was still a tight, more tactical affair.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not great. Like, I'm not thrilled. I think Camden Marshall should be thrilled. I think this is a great result for him. Now, we've said that before, and he has struggled to kind of just advance the national meet as an individual. I think those are just honestly just been bad luck flukes. Like, I don't say that about a lot of guys. I think that's just kind of been for him. So, really unique and interesting field right now. If I had if I put Spencer or Salmon, and I said, who do you like more? Who would you take?
I think Spencer. The experience there, I think I think they're honestly equivalent talents, which is a pretty wild thing to say considering what did Spencer run this past summer? 331.
Yeah, 331. Yeah.
But I think Solomon's at that, maybe not. He's not ready to run 3 for 31, but he's that kind of talent that he might be able to do that at some point. I would just lean Spencer because of he's seen these NCAA championships and he knows how to run the rounds. He knows how to keep himself clean. He's a big guy, which I think helps in these kind of rough and tumble 1500 meter races. I'll give him the edge slightly.
I agree. Did I miss anything more on the Big Ten?
I don't think so. No, and just to touch Marshall, like Rivaldo Marshall one more time, like he has been very consistent this spring. I think like this spring has like given a lot more validity to his 800 meter title. And this is kind of his first big hiccup. So again, why we're not going to be too upset about that. Let's go to the Big 12 though. We saw some really like just fun races. Starting with the women's 1500 meter. So we saw Juliet Cherubet run 409 to take home the title, beating Sadie Sargent, Olivia Howell, and Bila Jepkuri. I mean, what a like ad libs. 409s, yeah, excuse me. Just a wild collection of women in the Big 12 racing the 1500 meter that like a year and a half ago would have just sounded so strange. You have BYU runner, you have Illinois runner Olivia Howell now at Texas. Just such an interesting group, but a huge win for, and I think a huge performance for all like 3 out of the 4 of these women. I think Jep Curry is probably the only one that's a little upset about this race. And even then, she still ran under 410. She wasn't far off from the win here. But for everyone else, terrific race and I think a big boost for all of them going into regionals and nationals.
Cherubet has run 1525 this season. What does she choose? 15 or 5K?
You see, like my instinct is always to go 5K in this scenario, but because Parker Valby exists, it's just like it makes me reconsider a lot of things because you just know that the 5K, if she runs the 5K, which I think we both think Valby will, you just know that it's going to be like a really fast race, and like that 409 speed is really not going to be helping you out all that much in that kind of race. That said, the 1500 is so loaded that I think ultimately the 5K is still where her best option is. It's just not quite as deep and there isn't quite as much volatility. Like, like, again, going back to the Valby point, you know what kind of race is going to be run. And if you trust your fitness, and clearly she's very fit right now, and she's run that 1525, I think you just trust yourself to run that type of race at nationals in the 5K.
Yeah, I like her in the 5K still. Like, this is, you could argue, the most impressive win of the weekend. I think, maybe, unless I'm missing something. Yeah, this might be the most impressive win of the weekend, and yet I still think she should do 5K. The 5K is going to be fast. It's going to be a strength-based race.
Yep.
Some of her times, like the 10K, do not at all equate to her 1525 mark. Like, she's run 34:22. this season, which is kind of interesting. But I think she should go 5K. She's been a top 20 All American on the grass. The strength is very clearly there. I love that she did this, but
Mm-hmm.
I need to see. I just would need to see more 1500 success at that level for me to say, oh well, you should definitely do that in one of the greatest mile fields at 1500-meter fields we've seen in a very long time. Billup Chipkuri fourth by less than half a second to the winner.
Yeah.
Are we concerned?
Not really. I mean, this is just kind of the 1500 meters. I do think it is a little surprising that she lost to Sargent. Like, not her like best race in terms of the fit being more of a 3K 5K runner. But I can't argue. I can't be that upset considering Jeff Curry has been great all year. She still ran 409. She put herself in position, just didn't execute quite as well as she normally does.
And are you willing now, Olivia Howe, third place, first halfway decent 1500, and I'm
Yeah,
not even going to call that halfway decent, very good
very
1500
good.
meter time in quite some time now. Are you willing to put her back in the All American conversation?
I think conversation. I think she certainly belongs there. She's always been a master tactician, and it was really how a question of how fit was she. If she got to the requisite level of fitness, you can almost guarantee that she's going to be able to get through the rounds and run the smartest race and put herself in position. And I think clearly she's gotten back to a level that's good enough from a fitness perspective. And I just trust her savviness, know how, experience to get her through the rounds at regionals and at nationals. And I mean, honestly, you kind of forget that Olivia Howe was at Texas because we just haven't seen a lot like from her recently. And to have this pop up and have this type of performance at the perfect time is just really exciting to see if she can kind of build on this and is looking at potentially peaking at a very perfect time this year.
Yeah, I'm not going to try to just regurgitate everything you said in a different way. Completely agree. Um, I am happy that she's kind of getting, at least she's in the conversation, right? Which I don't think prior to this weekend she was not. Um, Big 12, staying in the Big 12. Let's go to the men's steeplechase in the Big 12. James
Sure.
Corrigan beats Victor Shitsama with a fantastic last 150 kick. Shitsama kind of opens up the inside lane, which I didn't really love him doing. And that's kind of how
Yeah, very
Corrigan,
weird.
yeah, very weird race from the late perspective of that. Gabel Pierdo was the guy who, like, again, hit the gas. I still don't know. You think it would be a little bit better to be somewhat more conservative, but I guess it's better to experiment
I
now.
like it.
You
Yeah,
like it?
I do. The steeplechase is one of those races where it's generally at the national meet. It's just you got to go. Like, and I think maybe from a coaching perspective, you would rather him run a little bit more conservative race to maybe maximize points at your conference championship. But in terms of preparation for the national meet, I truthfully don't hate it.
All right, I won't argue with that, but let's actually go back to who won this race. James Corrigan, Victor Shisama, both run 8:29. James Corrigan's now getting to the point where he's been this guy where he's been good, and we've seen that he's good, but he's never really been someone that has been good enough to kind of like enter the podcast conversation until now.
Yep.
And his progression has been outstanding this spring. He's gone from 850 to 846 to 834 to now 829. He ran 1330 to win the Husky Classic 5K last spring or last winter, this past winter, excuse me. And then he was an All-American in cross country. So the resume now is building. He's on a hot streak. He's got momentum. He's peaking at the right time. I really like where he is, and I wouldn't usually say that about
Mm-hmm.
sophomores, or at least guys with his level of experience.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the progression is that typical progression of a steeplechaser who's kind of finding his form and finding his fitness, and those guys usually do really well at the national meet when they kind of slowly build and improve their times race after race, and it seems like he is just peaking in at a perfect time. I feel like we either like mentioned him or at least had him on the rundown when he ran that 8:34, but we just had to like speed through it because of all the other results. So I'm glad that we're able to kind of dive in a little bit further. Obviously, a long line of really good BYU steeplechasers. He looks like he's next in line. And in a year where I mean there has been a lot of really good steeplechase times, his ability to kick and his consistency, I think, make him a very compelling guy to put in your All American predictions at this point because I know he's going to be coached well. You know he's probably going to run a smart race, and at the end of the day, he's going to be able to probably kick with almost anybody in the field, and all those factors just make him a very, again, compelling guy to be an All American favorite.
Quick, gun to your head: is Victor Shitsama an All American this season?
Yes.
Okay. I have not decided, so that's why I want to
I
put
still
you in
really like
pressure.
him, and
I know you do.
I still really like him, and he's still like he seems to just show up when the lights are brightest. He does that in cross country. He's done
True.
that in on the track. Um, he seems to peak at the right times, and it seemed like a little bit of a brain fart more than anything in that last 150.
Yeah.
And I would anticipate that's not going to happen again, or at least be the reason why he doesn't get an All American finish in June.
Yeah. I mean, I liked how he ran that race for about, you know, 2,850 meters, So,
Yeah.
um, 800 meters, Yusuf Bizimana, 146.07, takes over with 400 meters to go. He's only followed by Darius Kipiego of Iowa State. BYU Sebastian Fernandez, comes up on the inside rail to try to get involved, but Bizimana pulls away over that final 100. He takes the win in 146 for Fernandez, and Kipiego also run 146 for second and third, respectively. A good, encouraging win for Bizimana that I think we needed. I don't know if it
Hmm.
dramatically changes our opinion, but a good step in the right direction.
I think it just prevented us from like dropping him out of like the favorite status. Like I think a bad race here, I think I might have put him like not had him in that like top contender status anymore. So it was a big result in that sense of like he kind of stabilized his season a little bit after it seemed like there was a few uneven performances. I think everyone in this top three has to be really happy with their performances. I mean, all three of these guys, Fernandez back to back 146s now. He's looking really good. Kipiego, I'm sure, wished he could have ended up getting that second position, but ultimately not a bad race from him either. He's been very good again, continuing from his good indoor season. He's been great this outdoor season. Looks all like every bit an All American favorite. And this performance, I think, cements that status even further.
I agree. We're going to go to the women's 800 now. Gabija Galvydyte, Kellyanne Backford. Let's just start with Kellyanne Backford of Houston. She goes through 400 meters in 55 seconds. That is insane. I've never gone through 400 meters of an 800-meter race in 55 seconds. Now, granted, I wasn't good, but like the point stands. Like, 55 seconds for perspective. Michaela Rose came through for the first 400 meters at the indoor national meet en route to a sub-2 performance in 58 seconds. It's it's just ridiculous. Like, so I actually commend her for how well she hung on for something that's so overly ambitious. But Galvydyte
Hmm.
times it right, kicks her down by the 100-meter point. You can see that Galvydyte is gonna pass her. Eventually, she does.
Yeah.
Galvydyte, man, I know this is a stacked 800-meter field, but like, if there's any woman who I feel comfortable entering that Rose Whitaker tier, I might be persuaded to put her in that, especially after she got silver at the national meet last year, peaking perfectly, too flat. It's all
Yeah.
the right signs are there.
Yeah. I really don't know if there's a safer bet to finish in the top five at nationals outside of that our kind of top trio of names or so uh, than Galvydyte. She just knows how to run these races. She has peaked at the right time. She shows up big in the postseason and clearly has the fitness required to run like a two flat kind of race. And that if you run two flat at nationals and you position yourself well, you're almost assuredly going to run a finish in the top five and probably even better. So I agree. I think she's probably like that, the most consistent and like the person I'm most comfortable in, outside of that, the top like two or three names in the 800. And for Beckford, I mean, she ends up running 201. The way this is like the hardest way to run an 800, like an 11-second. Right? Am I doing the math right? No, not 11-second. What's the positive split? She runs 55, so she comes
Oh,
back.
so that means she comes back. Let's say she ran 55 and change. So that
Yeah,
means she probably ran 65 and change to
65.
run 201.
10
Yeah.
second positive split. Like if she can even that out, she's got at least like a two flat 159, I mean, probably 159 in her if she runs it a little bit smoother, because like that is a brutal way to run the 800. So on one level, not great that that's the way she ended up running, but like it tells me she's confident and has a lot more in the tank than I think this 201 performance showed.
Yeah, I'm actually like, I don't totally hate this for her. I don't I don't love 55-second
The
opening splits.
execution,
Like,
right? Yeah.
yeah, that wasn't great. But the national meet's going to be fast. Why? Because Michaela Rose exists. And
Yep.
if Beckford's able to make it to that NCAA final, which is not unrealistic, if she can do that and Rose is going to go out hard, one of the few women who would be willing to follow her initially is going to be Beckford. And I would like to imagine that Beckford can probably hang with other women who are going to be that late into the race at like a 58-second opening split rather than 55. I don't totally hate this. I could see her being an All-American if she, a top five All-American if she gets to the finals.
Yeah, because I mean, as long as she doesn't pass Rose, she's not going to run any faster than a 57, and that should set her up pretty well. And that's a tough. Like a lot of women are just going to be out of the race because they're just not going to be willing to push themselves that hard over the first 400, and she clearly has a comfort level of doing that. So, yeah, I think that's a great point. Anything else in the Big 12 before we move to the ACC?
Let's go to ACC.
All right, let's stick in the 800 and let's go to the men's side where we saw how does he do this every year? Like
I don't know.
Tarees Rhoden, it doesn't matter really what he's done during the regular season, shows up and wins the ACC title in 145. You had Reinhard Swainpool second, Virginia's Shane Cohen third, Nick Plant ended up fading to fourth. It's just stunning. Like I truly am in awe of his ability just to win conference championships despite running in such a competitive conference as the ACC with so many good 800 runners.
Yeah, what was fascinating about this race is that I went back to watch it and he guns it like he usually does initially,
Yep.
gets to the pole position, and he comes through 400 meters at 51 seconds, which is cooking, no doubt.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not new for him. But Nick Plant decides to then take over just as they're about to go into that last lap. And I initially was like, why? what is the point? Like, let him burn himself out. And yet at the same time, I can't help but wonder, I'm like, okay, well, he has 338 1,500 meter strength. In theory, that should allow him to fare better over that final lap. That obviously didn't happen. Rhoden comes out over the last 150, 200 meters and just kicks down Plant and takes home the win. It's the first time I've seen Rhoden kick and have it be successful. He's usually just a run from the front kind of guy. So I think I'm not so much down on Plant as much as I am up on Rhoden, just because of how he ran it.
And I think that's a key distinction because I think you're seeing Rhoden be able to be successful in more than one type of race and in more than one kind of position. Because I think previously you could see him succeed at these ACC championships because he would have a teammate in there or they would have a great race plan and he would execute that perfectly and everything would go exactly to plan. When he gets the national meet, that was maybe not the case as much, but you've seen over like the last year or so where he has been more successful at national meets. Despite everything not going exactly to plan or exactly as he would like. And I think this performance this weekend was a great indication that I think he's just going to be around no matter what kind of race it is when it comes to national prelims, national finals.
Yeah, he is such a challenging runner to watch because I just want to be like, "What are you doing?" But that was the first time where I was like, look what happens. But no, yeah, it was a great race and first time under 146. Great runs from Swainpool. I think he validated his 145 performance.
Yep.
Virginia's Shane Cohen is someone who you guys got to be very, very careful of. He is really good. He's been very consistent. He's peaking properly. 146 is a PR for him. And I don't like saying that about a UVA guy, but I got to give UVA their props. So yeah, and again, I'm not worried about Plant, but that's it.
All right, let's switch gears, go to the women's 5K. Olivia Markezich taking home the win, 15:23. Siona Chisholm, 15:32 for second. Good bounce back performance from Markezich. Looks really good. And for Chisholm, I mean, again, these are the type of performances that we like make us get so excited about her. And we just need a little bit of a level of consistency with her because the highs have been great. We just haven't seen them like be run in a consistent manner. I mean, beating Margot Appleton, Sam Bush, Grace Hartman, like big
All of whom
scalps
were
there.
doubling back.
Yeah, very, very fair. But I mean, still running that time, beating these women, absolutely great performance for her. And again, will probably make me push for us to rank her too highly in the fall.
Yeah, I was going to say in the summer. That's usually how this comes back to
Yeah.
it. She did run under 1540 at the Raleigh Relays. So
Yes.
now we do have 2 data points, which is encouraging. But yeah, I don't really have anything more on the women's 5K. And while we're here, we might as well just knock out the men's 5K
Sure.
and really just Parker Wolfe in general. Parker Wolfe wins the 10K, 5K double. He runs 13:19 on the 5K, which is
Yeah.
arguably like the fastest time relative to what everyone else ran, maybe other
Sure.
than Parker Valby. So, but yeah, and I'm trying to figure out like what else to say about him, but that's it. I got nothing.
First 10K made it look easy. I mean, you ran through how he's probably not going to make have a regional qualifying time in the 10K, which is kind of funny. But I'd be really interested to see him actually run the 10K at nationals. Unfortunately, we're just not going to get to see it. So let's see, what do we want to go to? Let's go to steeplechases next.
Yeah.
Nathan Mountain takes home the win in 8:30. Teammate Yassine Sato second. Really interesting race. Brett Gardner of NC State in the mix as well. But Mountain's just passed every test this year. He has looked absolutely fantastic. And I know we keep having the conversation about which steeplechaser we like the most. It's really hard for it not to be him because he just keeps putting in these great performances, kicks really well, runs fast times. I really don't know if there's that much more to say.
He is the Sam Whitmarsh of the steeplechase this year.
Sure.
Yeah,
Great
and
comp.
that's kind of how I feel about it. He's great. Sato's great. That might be Sato's best performance. And he's been having a great year. Brett Gardner, awesome. 831, I want to say. Was it 831? Yeah, I think it's right.
Sounds about right. Yep.
But he's been great. And CJ Singleton was the guy who kind of opened up that race at the end.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't love when he made the move, but also, what can you do? Like, he's a sophomore, and also he still ran the 830s. Like, I can't, can't bash him too hard, right? It's still a good run.
Yeah, I think it's a little inexperience right there, taking control of a race when you were in high school, but not quite when you are able to at this level in college. So yeah, no, not a terrible race for him by any means. Just maybe a poor tactical decision. In the women's side and the steeple, we saw Sophie Novak run 9:48 for the win there. I can definitely tell you that Garrett was not surprised considering his predictions in that race were spot on. So I don't think there's a whole lot to say about that either.
Yeah, I was surprised about how good some of those were. All right, moving off of that. And Gladys Chepngetich. Let's wrap up the ACC with Gladys
Yeah.
Chepngetich of Clemson. 4:13 in the 1500-meter finals to get second place to Margot Appleton, who looks so good. And then 800-meter final, she doubles back, takes down Michaela Page and Lindsey Butler and one or two other women who I'm just not mentioning right now. Runs 2:02 to win the 800-meter title. Love this result for her. Lets me know that she can navigate rounds effectively, double back effectively. Really, really like that for her. I don't know what it says about her ceiling, but in terms of what her floor is, I really like that.
Yeah, that's I think a good distinction of this kind of raises our baseline expectations for her going into nationals as someone that we think should be able to make it through rounds, or at least we'll have a good shot of doing so at the national meet. Let's transition to the Pac-12, and this was held at altitude, so some of these times converted. Roisin Willis, I think this was one of the most underrated races of the weekend, and I think maybe one of the more impactful ones, running 2 flat for the win. She has just not looked like her top end self for a little while now, and this 2 flat performance shows me that she's at least back to close to 100%. And when she's firing on all cylinders, she is one of the best in the country in the 800, and will be. I'm just really interested to see her at regionals, because if she can put together another like 1 or 2 races like this, I'm going to be very confident in her ability to do some damage at the national meet.
Are you looking at TFRS right now, like the national leaderboard?
I am not. No.
Okay, cool. Don't. How many women do you think have run under 201 this season? This season alone?
9.
9. Good job.
Wow, look at that.
That was pretty good. Yeah, 9. And Willis became, well, I guess, a handful of, no, Willis and Galvydyte cracked it, and Jallow cracked it this past weekend.
And that's why it's like it's so hard for and that's why it probably sounded a little underwhelming when I was talking about Jallow, because there's just so many good women in the 800. Like it's like, and just having like one big performance, like you got to have like a couple to really like be like that much better, show that you're that much better than like all these women who have been running 2 flat.
Yeah, no, I agree. I like the performance a lot from Willis. I wish it's not her fault that it was converted, right? Like it's not. I wish it was not converted and she ran that 2 flat, but like, I'm not, if I'm just being ticky tacky now, it is great. It shows us that she's at least back in form, back in shape. She's going to have much tougher competition moving forward, obviously. But you're right. Yeah. A good, encouraging step in the right direction.
On the men's side in the middle distances, we saw Elliott Cook have a fantastic weekend, beating all the Washington men to win the 1500-meter title, and then comes back and wins the 800-meter crown as well. The finish, that last lap of that 1500-meter was super interesting to watch. The way Hauser kind of took the lead, and you're like, all right, this is the move. Like he's gonna get it. Like we've seen this story before. But to Cook's credit, he battles back and takes back the lead and takes home the win, holds off a hard charging Nathan Green as well. It was very impressive, and leads me to ask, like, what's his best event going forward?
I think it's the 15.
Okay.
I think maybe because he was already an All-American, right?
In the 8 or the 15?
Well, that's what I'm trying to figure out here. So, like, and like, let me see here, but because he's been super consistent over 800 meters, and that's really where I like can't help but wonder how well he's going to run. I mean, he ran a converted 147 low this past weekend. Let's see where he was last winter. He was a mile All-American. I still think I like him in the 1500 meters because of that 800 meter speed. Like, few guys are going to be able to beat Hauser in a tactical race when it comes to sit and kick, and he's already in the lead. But Cook did it. And so admirable there. And I think I look Cook in the 1500 a lot.
Yeah, I do too. And he just adds to that list of guys, I mean, who you feel like have the potential of winning the whole thing. I mean, quite frankly, I mean, you have to put him in there now after this kind of performance. Tactical setting, beating 3 guys who could be in the finals with him at the national meet is certainly a hugely impressive performance. Elsewhere, we saw the 5K, 10K double be executed by Bailey Hertenstein on the women's side and Kai Robinson on the men's side. Not how like good performances for them. I am really interested to see how Robinson looks going into the national meet, if he can kind of be a little bit more competitive with Wolfe and Nico Young, depending on what Nico Young decides to do. I think Robinson could end up being the 10K favorite. I mean, you obviously have Tim Samuel, but he's looking really good right now. Won the 10K last year. If he continues to look as good as he has, he could end up winning a 10K title this year unexpectedly.
Wouldn't it be wild? All right, hear me out. Hear me out. What happens if Nico Young preserves his legs and does the 1500?
I know you mentioned that last week after he ran 334.
After he ran 334, that would then open up the 10K and the 5K for Robinson to be a double repeat champion again.
He would be the most disrespected double 5K, 10K champion of all time. Like, he would be considered like not the best runner in the country in really either of those years. Well, maybe last year you could make a case for it, considering what he did throughout
Will Sumner,
the winter season too.
Yeah.
Right, fair. But that would be a pretty wild, like the way we would have to frame that would be very interesting.
Man, and he would be like, and that's such a shame because like that would be one of the most historic, like, I can't. It would be historic. I mean, you're talking Chesrick level, tier, which is wild. All right. Anyways, I'm going to move us off of that. Let's leave the Pac-12 and go to the Big East, where we'll wrap up here. Sean Dolan, 145, his first time under 146. He gets the PR there. Dan Watkey, 147. Thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, for Dolan just to get the PR, I think is huge. I think gives him a big boost of confidence going into the national meet, knowing that he can run and win that kind of race. I think is huge for him, beating a good field as well. I think he's kind of someone in that next tier below like the top favorites. But I think after this race, you at least see a little bit of a higher ceiling for him, which I think is exciting. And for Watkey, I mean, this is he went to high school just down the road from where I am right now, and was obviously didn't see a lot of success at Oregon before transferring to Villanova. And it looks like he's already in a perfect spot for him moving forward. I think he could be their next great middle distance runner moving forward. A great sign here.
I'm just going to breeze through some of these results here. Melissa Riggins, 408 to defeat Shannon Flockhart for the Big East title. Wild that I'm just skimming by a 408 mark. 408. It's ridiculous. Like, I put it in their quick hits section. I was like, what am I doing? But I mean, it's basically just like Melissa Riggins is really, 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 really good. All right, moving on. Speaking of which, Kimberly May, who we're also going to briefly skim by, ran 1526 over 5,000 meters, adding so much dynamism to her resume. Speaking of Providence, by the way, Kenzie Doyle committed to Providence this past week.
Yeah.
If you listened to last week's pod, you would have known it was basically a lock. So just throwing it out there. Impressive by Kimberly May. Don't think it really changes anything. Chloe Scrimger, let's talk about her. She runs her first ever 10K and wins it in 32:30s, somewhere around there, I want to say. I don't know how much I love the women's 10K this year. Despite her inexperience in this event, I might call her an All-American lock. Would you?
I would certainly say so. I mean, you think like, what is the 10K like? Compare that to what it was last year, like, or like even 2 years ago. Like the amount of turnover that there's been in that event, like it is wild. It's just completely different group.
It is, yeah. It's like Valby and Olamamwe are the others who I can see being locks. You can maybe argue Grace Hartman. It depends. She's certainly made an argument for herself. But after that, I don't know how many more locks there are. Maybe Thorvaldsen. Maybe I'm not ready to put Thorvaldsen there quite yet. So yeah, I think I'd put Scrimger as a lock.
I agree. I mean, she's proven her abilities over pretty much every other event in every other season. There's no reason to think that she couldn't succeed at a high level in the 10K.
Actually, speaking of women's 10K runners, Amaris Tanisma
Yes.
ran 33:42 to win the 10K title easily. I mean, it wasn't even a competition. She destroyed. She ran 15:40 at the Wake Forest Invitational. She's beginning to look really, really strong. And the women's 5K is quietly really solid, but I think she should do the 10K because she's already run 32:52 back in late March. Is that a fair argument?
Yeah, I think so. And it's been interesting to see her transition from 1,500-meter runner who also is good at the 5K and also good at cross country to 5K like runner who is it makes sense is good at cross country to now she is a 10K runner. It's just been a wild kind of transition for her. But I think like we've laid out, the 10K seems to be the open event. I think she's going to be able to use her speed well there. She seems very comfortable in this event now. I think it makes a lot of sense for her to go in that direction.
Yeah, that 10K. That's interesting. And we don't even know if Valby would do the 10K as well. I
Yeah, and that's the hard part. We really don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Valby could still very realistically do the double, but I also think there's a realistic scenario where she just does the 5K, which would be very interesting. So, Ben, did I miss anything else?
No, I think we got everything we planned on. Sorry if we missed out on a few other great performances. I'm sure we did, but we tried to cover as many as we could.
Wow. Yeah. All right. So on the site, we have so much first thoughts from conference weekend. Go check that out. It's awesome. We'll have regional reactions on the site as well. I'll have an article on that once the scratches and declarations are published. D2, D3 Nationals coming up soon. I think that's next weekend. So not this upcoming weekend, but the following one. We're going to have previews out on the site for that. We'll have regional predictions in the coming week or so. We'll have, regional content after some of the meets are done, of course. We got a whole lot of stuff. Go check it out on YouTube. YouTube at the Stride Report. Rating, review, subscribe, and then also Amazon affiliate links. Don't forget to check those out. I got you really good deals on Amazon and it helps us out. So thank you. That's all I got, Ben.
All right. Well, until next weekend, I'll talk to you.
I'll talk to you.